All right, let's jump right into one of those classic English puzzles that honestly trips up just about everyone, the difference between above and over. We all use them, but if you really stop to think about it, what's the actual rule? Which one is supposed to be higher?
Now, to get to the bottom of this, we're not just guessing. We are going straight to a powerhouse of English grammar, Michael Swan's Practical English Usage. This book is basically the gold standard for these tricky questions, so you know we're getting the real story.
So let's just ask the big question right out of the gate. Which one is really higher? Is a plane flying above the clouds or over the clouds? Well, here's the tricky part, and it's why we're all here, right? Sometimes they can mean the exact same thing, and that's where the confusion really sets in.
But here's a thought. What if asking which one is higher is actually the wrong question to begin with? It feels like it should be the right one, but it's not. While both words can mean higher than, the secret to telling them apart lies somewhere else entirely.
And here it is. This is the big reveal. The key isn't about raw altitude or which thing is physically higher up. No, it's all about the relationship between the two objects. Are they touching? Is one covering the other? Are we talking about a number on a scale? That's the question we should be asking.
Okay, so clue number 1. This is probably the most useful rule you're going to find, and it's all about contact and covering. Get this one down, and you've solved like 80% of the problem right there. So here's the core idea. We tend to use over when one thing is covering or even just touching another. Think of a blanket over you. But we use above when there's a definite gap, a space between the two things. There's no contact.
This example nails it. He put the coat over his pajamas. Why? Because the coat is physically touching and covering them. You'd never say he put the coat above his pajamas. That would sound really strange, right? So if it's covering, it's over.
Now let's flip it. We've got a little house above the lake. The house is definitely higher than the lake, but it's not touching it. There's a space, a hillside, some air, whatever, between them. And that space is exactly why we use above. Saying it's over the lake would kind of make it sound like it's built on stilts right in the middle of the water. Okay, so that handles physical objects pretty well. But what about when we're talking about things you can't touch, like ideas or measurements? Well, our second clue has to do with things that exist on a kind of imaginary vertical scale. Whenever you can picture a vertical line, like a thermometer, a chart, or sea level, your go-to word is almost always going to be above. It's 3 degrees above zero, not over zero. A mountain is 8,000 meters above sea level. A student's score is well above average. See a pattern? It's about a fixed point on a scale. And that brings us to our third and final clue. This one moves away from positions and scales altogether and just looks at plain old quantities. Basically, anytime you just mean more than. Yep, when you're talking about raw numbers, ages, speeds, crowds of people, over is the word you want. It's just a more natural, common way of saying more than. You have to be over 18 to see the movie, the car was going over 110 miles an hour, there were over 100,000 people at the concert. Simple. So, time for a quick pop quiz. To get into that R-rated movie, do you have to be above 18 or over 18? Well, since we're talking about a quantity, a number, the answer is, of course, you have to be over 18. Easy, right? All right, now for a quick pro tip that's going to make all of this really stick in your brain. If you've got the hang of above and over, then you actually already know how to use their opposites. It's a perfect mirror. All the rules we just talked about for above also apply to below, and all the rules for over work for its counterpart, under. It's the same exact logic, just flipped. And you can see it right here. For that vertical temperature scale, it's 3 degrees below zero, just like it was above zero. And for that movie age, which is a quantity, you can't get in if you're under 18, just like you had to be over 18. The system just works. Whew! Okay, I know we just went through a few different rules, but they all connect. It really just boils down to a couple of simple ideas. So let's pull it all together and make a final, clear summary. So here it is, the ultimate cheat sheet. Use above when something's higher but not touching, when there's a gap. Also use it for those vertical scales like temperature and height. Then use over when something is covering or touching something else, or when it just means more than for things like ages and speeds. And of course, when you're crossing something like a bridge over a river. That's it. That's the whole game right there. So the next time you hear someone use above or over, you'll know that the real question isn't about which one's higher, it's about the relationship between things. It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other super simple, everyday words that we all use have a surprisingly deep and complex story hiding just under the surface?